Hey, this is Mark, and this is episode 29 of the Why Are We Still Doing This podcast. I work in a public school, and when you work in a public school, you realize that public schools have changed since you were a child. Specifically for me, a lot has changed since the 1980s. Methods have changed, discipline approaches have changed. The fact that teachers can't openly smoke butts outside a classroom window, that's changed. I vividly remember sitting in music class in elementary school, looking out the window and seeing our very intimidating principal at the time stroll out onto the loading dock and light up for a nice smoke break. It was comical because in a time when they were pushing the DARE program into schools, it was our school leader not at all trying to hide the fact that he was smoking in front of children. But I think the biggest disappointment coming out of school is realizing that finishing a book no longer gets you a personal pan pizza. Do other countries do this? Do other places in the world incentivize reading with a 6-inch pizza? The Book It program was one of the most incredible incentive programs mankind had ever created for public schools. If you didn't know, and I can't believe I'm actually having to explain it here, but the Book It program would reward you with a 6-inch pizza from Pizza Hut whenever you read a book. That's pretty much it. Did we earn every one of those pizzas? Not really. I do remember some of the, less successful kids in school trying to convince their teacher they just read all 338 pages of On the Banks of Plum Creek by Laura Ingalls Wilder in their spare time, essentially reading the summary on the back of the book and trying to write an entire book report off of that. But those of us who did earn that free pizza certificate, we couldn't wait to cash it in at our local Pizza Hut. And while this was exciting for us kids, it was essentially a bill for our parents, because now they got to buy dinner for the rest of the family. Let's face it, the Book It program was designed to get you into Pizza Hut. It's like the infamous $10 off $10 or more coupons that JCPenney has. And having worked for JCPenney for years and having a mom that would pry herself out of a hospital bed if she knew she had one of those coupons that was expiring, it was by far the most successful coupon the company had ever created. People's logic when they get one is, well, that's $10 I get for free. And sometimes you could find something that wasn't even $10 and you'd get it for free. What a rush of dopamine that was for retirees and other geriatric individuals who had nothing much else to do on a Tuesday morning at 11:30. I think for most of us who grew up in the 80s, we've suppressed some of the tragedies we experienced, whether it be the horse drowning in The Neverending Story, getting branded by the thick metal General Motors seatbelt buckle every day during summer vacation, or for some of us, simply Dad coming home from work. But there's one memory that I think us 80s kids have all suppressed. This one particular memory buried way the hell down, even deeper than the first time we saw Meemaw or Pa take out their false teeth like it was no big thing. And that is the impact that was left on us by the long-forgotten, uber-traumatic, but so 80s, and would sure to be a hell of a lawsuit, the public school birthday spanking. Now, I talked about this once while doing stand-up, and some people had no clue what I was talking about. They were like, you got birthday spanked in school? And then I began to question the whole thing, like, was this some regional thing and happened nowhere else in the country? Maybe it was. I feel like it happened all the time in my elementary school. It's your birthday, your teacher / or principal gave you a birthday spanking. It happened so much I'm surprised it wasn't our school mascot at the time. Just a giant hand. The Cheshire Spankers, I don't know. Most kids got a birthday spanking from their parents, and some got double the punishment from school. Take this ride with me, okay? It's the 1980s. In general, a lawless land. No helmet, no seatbelt, no problem. Our knees were constantly scraped. Do kids today know what a scrape is? Most enjoyable aspects of childhood then had some element of pain associated with it. Our playground equipment generally consisted of a thick slab of metal that got so hot in the summer you could cook a fat slice of Elio's pizza on it. Video game controllers were in the shape of a rectangle, completely not ergonomic for our hands and left us with cramps. Seatbelts in cars had smooth metal buckles that would brand the General Motors logo on our skin every hot summer day. In schools, we had classrooms specifically for, quote, the bad kids. And I literally think that was the sign on the door to that room. Just a sign that said, bad kids. And the font they used looked like crumbling rocks to make it look more badass. Our elementary school principal wouldn't hesitate to angrily come over the PA system to call for a kid who really screwed up and was going to be sent home. He literally would just push the button and scream into the microphone, summoning a kid who thought they got away with something pretty sneaky at recess. There was never an excuse the interruption or attention students. It was like this call from hell that echoed throughout the building. And after, we went right on with our arithmetic. The physical aftermath of the public school birthday spanking was very similar to the feeling of sitting on a 6-hour direct flight across the country. Everything down there is a little tingly, legs go numb, sore for days. Almost like jet lagged, you'd get smacked so hard you'd end up in a different time zone. And even if you went home and told your folks how much it hurt, you'd get some 80s parenting response like, well, you probably did something to deserve it. What a vague, self-esteem crushing statement that was. Oh, the 80s. The public school birthday spanking was one of those situations you could not escape. Like, you'd think the teachers would forget, but most likely there was an entire faculty meeting around creating a spreadsheet for smacking kids on their behind. Back in the Wild West that was the 1980s, it was my female physical education teacher who was the unofficial designated staff member of our school to give us our annual birthday spankings. And it was one of those things like, you tried to run, but you were just completely helpless against those ripped 80s jazzercise muscles of hers, and put you basically in an arm bar that would make most UFC guys tap out, and just pound your bottom with an open palm like you were a giant glass ketchup bottle. Just make your eyes water. And you know there was that one kid who teachers are like, I can't wait until it's that birthday. Right? Teachers at home doing those exercises with that hand grip thing that people in prison seem to use in old 80s movies, practicing their form like they're in those face slap competitions they have nowadays. They're putting extra rings on their fingers the day of the kid's birthday, right? Big fat metal ones. My question is, when did this just stop? Like, this just seemed to fizzle out. There was never a retirement ceremony for the public school birthday spanking. Like, I don't remember my parents ever getting a note from the superintendent with something like, yeah, so we screwed up. There was never a permission slip for this. Like today, teachers got to send a permission slip home if they want to show students Home Alone 2 before Christmas vacation. But what if there was a permission slip for this back then? What would that permission slip have looked like? Something like, I do allow former women's boxing champion and now current phys ed teacher to openly slap my child's bottom on their most exciting day of the year. Or did parents call in the school and say, little Johnny's been acting a fool lately. Can you put a little mustard on those birthday spankings tomorrow? Maybe there was an option for the pinch to grow an inch. Sometimes the pinch to grow an inch was even more painful, depending on who was giving it. If it was Uncle Joe with those big sausage fingers, sometimes he couldn't quite get a good grip on a chunk of skin. But if it was your Aunt Shirley, the one with the big, long, sharp fake nails that could feel like box cutters digging into your flesh, where did the pinch to grow an inch come from? When did it become this add-on to getting spanked, as if that wasn't enough? And how did they calculate you grow just an inch? Was it because when you were pinched you jumped, which ultimately stretched your muscles and promoted overall growth? I don't know. I don't know anyone who gives their kid a birthday spanking anymore. It's one of those things that, quote, quietly went away, as the kids say. I'm guessing it was replaced with something a little more subtle, like a birthday high five. You know, another thing that boomers could rant about, how kids today are too soft for. They say stuff like, builds character, or puts hair on your chest, something stupid like that. I don't know. Boomers love to say, my parents hit me with a belt. I turned out okay. Really? Are you really okay? Or I didn't need a seatbelt to drive. Never needed it. Well, good for you. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent here. I feel like Catholic schools of the 1950s were the last entity in education to have total compliance in schools. You see that movie, The Nun? Our parents who went to Catholic school are like, yeah, that's not scary. Because they know what real nuns were like in Catholic schools back in the day. The nuns who taught my parents make that movie look like an episode of Paw Patrol. They'd beat you with a wooden ruler if you were left-handed and forced you to write with the other hand. Although I think it was really just a way of keeping costs down and not having to shell out for one left-handed desk. And I think that's what we need. We need nuns. Nuns with giant hard rulers made from the most durable wood on the planet. They probably special ordered their rulers made from some ridiculously strong wood that's found in the deepest part of the rainforest. We need nuns with rulers. I think that's what we need. Not really. But that would be a great business model, though. A third-party agency, schools can subcontract for a day that would bring in about 5 to 6 nuns, one per grade, maintain order, and leave. They wouldn't even have to be real nuns. They could just be retired teachers who pick up a robe at Spirit Halloween on the way to the school, right? Like, there's nothing spiritual about it. Just the image would make kids be like, oh my God, my grandpa told me about these women. Kind of like actors wearing lab coats in commercials. You know they aren't doctors, but you trust them anyway. And the kids would never know when they were coming either, but it could be something teachers could hang over their head like Santa Claus. You know, Daniel, I heard Sister Mary Carmela just got a fresh batch of rulers made up. Right? And I have the perfect name for the business. NWA. Nuns with Attitude. And their slogan would be straight out of confession. Speaking of teachers, it is unfortunate how much work comes home with teachers after the school day ends. And I'm not just talking about correcting papers, creating lessons, that sort of thing, but parent communication. And over the years of having my own children in school, I've sent emails to teachers all hours of the day and often received responses to them after the school day ends, when teachers should be sipping on a nice glass of wine and disassociating after a day of 1,001 questions. But they don't. Some would respond within 10 minutes of my email. And while I appreciate the prompt response, I want to write back and say, this definitely could have waited. Go spend time with your family. What did teachers do in the 1980s when they needed to communicate with parents? They'd probably have to make a phone call during their prep time, most likely, which isn't out of the ordinary now. But the thing was, when the school day ended, so did your communication with parents. Sure, you'd make calls after school while still in the school building, but you were not writing emails at 9 o'clock at night to, quote, little Johnny's mom about how he made yet another obscene gesture with his cheese stick during snack time. You left work and did what you needed to do to prepare for the next day. Historically, that has been the biggest barrier in both my time working in mental health and education, and that is trying to make contact with parents. I've had many families that I've worked with over the years where it has been incredibly difficult to get in touch with, and I've always wondered, what if I was calling with an emergency? Most of the time, they would never pick up or their voicemail was full and I couldn't leave a message. But sometimes I forget that some people still prepay for minutes on their phone and might run out. And that's no fault of their own. They just don't have the financial means to make it work. Remember the feeling of being a kid in elementary school and you're out at JCPenney on a Saturday afternoon and you turn the corner and all of a sudden you run into your classroom teacher, and in that moment you're completely in shock because there was a time when you thought your teacher lived in the school and never left. Your small, undeveloped brain could not comprehend that this person would have anything else to do with their life other than spend every waking minute of their day in a school. And when they see you and try to converse with you, you freeze. You don't know how to act normal because hopefully you've been a student that regularly follows expectations and follows the lead of the teacher in any type of interaction. And your teacher, in that moment, doesn't look anything like they normally do. They're wearing sweatpants, their hair is up, maybe you caught them cussing out their child's father over the phone, whatever it is. It's different. I remember my freshman year of high school, we had a male science teacher who, let's say, paid a little more attention to the girls in my class than some of the male counterparts. And I remember my cousin, who was older at the time, who had the same teacher years ago, said that you'd get a good grade in that class if you wore a short skirt. Obviously, this advice was not catered towards teenage boys like myself. Anyway, I do remember one day going to a shopping plaza with my mom and waiting outside of a women's lingerie store, as I'm obviously not going into one of those places with my mom. It wasn't a Victoria's Secret or anything like that, but one of those Hanes outlet stores, nothing racy at all. And as I'm waiting for my mom out of that lingerie store comes that particular 9th grade science teacher. "Hello, Mark," he said. And my immediate thought was, ugh, really? You? And I mean, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, right? Now, I guarantee if I ever saw any of my teachers out in public in the 1980s, they definitely would not be wearing sweatpants. That was still a time, for the most part, when people got, quote, dressed for the day. And speaking of getting dressed for the day, I remember this one particular Sunday, a lazy Sunday years ago when my daughter was very young. The kind of Sunday where you realize around 3:30 in the afternoon that you didn't bother to brush your teeth that morning. My wife, daughter, and I took a nice long walk into town, and as we were approaching our house, we noticed our neighbor outside raking some leaves. She was well in her late 80s, still drove her own car, which surprisingly was not a Buick, mowed her lawn, cooked, cleaned, and moved around better than most men and women in their 40s do. To her credit, these previous attributes were not her most crowning achievement. We stopped to talk to her, and as she ogled and tickled our daughter with her crypt keeper-like fingers, my wife and I could not help but notice how well dressed she was on a lazy Sunday afternoon. Button-down cotton shirt complete with a matching jacket and trousers, most likely by Alfred Dunner or some other JCPenney brand. And the best part, not a goddamn wrinkle in sight. And this is when we began to realize how rare her breed is nowadays. Simply put, no one gets dressed for the day anymore. To her generation, dressing for the day meant ironing your dress slacks, not pants, and button-down Oxford, even if it meant being in those clothes while you wash and fold laundry from the time The Price is Right comes on until Final Jeopardy. My grandparents were the same way. As long as I knew him, my great-uncle wore dress pants every day, no matter if he was taking me to Friendly's in his two-tone brown and yellow Monte Carlo, which looked like a rotten banana on wheels, or sitting in his favorite chair watching country line dancing for 6 hours. I don't think in his 83 years of life his legs ever felt any other fabric other than wool. And that's another thing these old-timers enjoy. Natural fibers. They don't put up with this polyester garbage they make pants out of today. Anyway, where am I going with this? Getting dressed for the day meant that you were confident in tackling anything that came your way, all because you looked your best. I've got stuff to do. Get ready for the day, face challenges, grab life by the horns, carpe diem. Now, everyone is so damn depressed there is no need to get out of bed. Years ago when I would drive into work, I would drive by an elementary school in a pretty awful neighborhood, and I saw an army of parents sporting SpongeBob SquarePants, Hello Kitty, and Angry Birds fleece bottoms marching toward the school, walking their kids in for the day. And I used to look down on those kinds of people and think that they just didn't work and wore that all day. But then I realized maybe they work nights. Maybe they work third shift. Maybe they have some really severe mental health issues and getting out of the house to walk their kids to school is a big step for them. Who knows? But when did college students start wearing pajamas to class? This was happening when I was in college in the early 2000s. Some of them would go the whole day in pajama bottoms. I mean, it was kind of awesome for an 8 a.m. class, but by 2 p.m., I just didn't feel good wearing them around campus. I see people in Walmart wearing house slippers. Sometimes kids wear them to school. Kids wear Crocs, no laces, no trouble getting them on, quick and easy. I remember an 8 a.m. class in college might as well been a 3 a.m. class because that's how early 8 a.m. felt during those times. Most classes were at 9:15 to 9:20, somewhere around there. And that was a luxury. For me nowadays, sleeping in until 8 a.m. is sometimes a luxury. I remember when I was a kid, my mom would say she, quote, slept in until 8 a.m. I'd say, that's not sleeping in. Sleeping in for me at that point in my life was 11 a.m., sometimes noon. As an avid Disney theme park connoisseur and history buff, one of my favorite things to do is look at old pictures of Disneyland from the 1950s and 60s and see what the park looked like back then. And the first thing I always notice when I am perusing these photos and videos is how well dressed everyone is. I've seen thousands of images and video from Disneyland from the 50s and 60s, and I've not seen one pair of AND1 basketball shorts, no tank tops that say something like, quote, most expensive day ever, no sandals, and people generally look like they bathed and washed their hands after using the restroom. They all got dressed for the day. They had somewhere to be. A lot of times, if we don't have to go anywhere, we wear sweatpants all day. That's this generation's, quote, getting dressed for the day. That's why oftentimes we see the older generation, people in their 70s and 80s, wearing jeans while simply relaxing around the house. Grandpa falling asleep in the recliner in his favorite wool trousers and button-down Oxford shirt. But I couldn't imagine going to Disney World on a 94-degree day dressed in anything other than nylon shorts, a tank top, and sneakers. I mean, going to a theme park in general in anything other than the most comfortable, moisture-wicking clothing and is some sort of dedication to, quote, getting dressed for the day. Imagine getting on Splash Mountain in dress shoes, pleated dockers, and a short-sleeved dress shirt. As if Splash Mountain isn't uncomfortable enough, getting absolutely soaked, having to walk around somewhat wet for the rest of the day, you're wearing uncomfortable shoes and wool pants. Also, if I'm dishing out thousands of dollars for a Disney vacation, I'm going to be comfortable. It's like the ridiculousness of the Secretary of Transportation saying, people should dress up when they go to the airport. Listen, buddy, if I'm in the middle seat between two giant oafs with sweaty arm hair on their fourth little bottle of Jim Beam on Frontier Airlines, the last thing I want to be in during those 4 hours on a plane is tight, constricting formal wear. This isn't the 1950s when primarily men flew on business and had to go to some big stuffy meeting the minute they got off the plane. I'm going to wear what I would normally wear if I didn't have to go anywhere for the day. Most likely, I'm going on vacation. I fly Southwest Airlines, okay? Let's be realistic with your expectations. But I think about what kids wore to elementary school in the 1980s and early 90s compared to today, and it wasn't uncommon to find a sixth grader wearing an old Bud Dry shirt that belonged to his father. It wasn't uncommon to find a child with a Marlboro duffel bag, something his mom or dad earned with Marlboro miles, which I've talked about before on the show. I'll never forget walking into my elementary school cafeteria and seeing a kid wearing a Poison concert tee. And on it was a very provocative image of a woman with long legs and heels with the caption, quote, open up and say ah, with the band's tour dates between her legs. I think that would be an immediate phone call home today. I mean, if you wore that to Disney World, they might make you turn it inside out. They'd probably call you down to the office today and make you change your shirt if you wore that. But again, the 1980s was a wild time. It was socially acceptable to outfit your children with apparel and accessories through all your hard-earned smoking and cashing in those Marlboro miles. And even then, wearing a matching Marlboro tracksuit could be considered getting dressed for the day. And maybe some of those kids received a Marlboro crewneck sweatshirt, not as a hand-me-down from their dad, but as a gift for their birthday. And that was the 80s in a nutshell. A Marlboro crewneck and a big smack in the rear. And maybe the opportunity to cash in that book it coupon for a personal pan pizza. Anyway, thanks for listening. This was episode 29 of the Why Are We Still Doing This podcast. And if you'd like to write in, you can do so. Why are we still doing this podcast at gmail.com? Why are we still doing this podcast at gmail.com? And if you'd like to support the show, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/why are we still doing this. That's buymeacoffee.com/why are we still doing this. All one word. And I hope to see you guys in a couple of weeks in the next episode. And we'll see you then. Thanks. Bye.